Hello you lovely cubs, it's the Dragon Lord here, back again with another video. Now today we're doing part 3 of What If Luffy Went Back in Time. Now, before this video starts, I do hope you guys have liked and subscribed if you love this series. And with that out of the way, join the Discord and the Roblox group, and let's get into it.
I'm up now, 20,000 on a bus down, I'm on my way, I'm going up now, and I ain't never gonna touchdown. I ain't never gonna touchdown. No, I ain't never gonna touchdown.
The crew, after saying their goodbyes to Mary and Kaya, end up sailing out to sea. They sail for a week or so, and then they kinda get bored. So Luffy ends up saying that they should test out the Going Merry, and they end up shooting the cannon a few times. They then spot this big rock in the distance, and at Luffy's command, they fire a cannonball at it. But unbeknownst to them, that rock wasn't a rock. It was actually some bounty hunters that were just staying there for a bit. They approached the Going Merry and boarded on the ship. They took Luffy hostage and they took Usopp hostage. The rest of the crew came, Nami and Zoro. Upon looking closer, Zoro recognized these guys. They were bounty hunters like he used to be. One was Johnny, he wore a blue jacket and sunglasses all the time, and the other was Yosaku, a man who wore a green jacket and a wrestling helmet. Johnny ends up asking for help as Yosaku doesn't really look so good, and everybody really takes notice of this. And then Nami recognizes that Yosaku has scurvy, so she ends up helping him by curing him, which takes over 2 days. In this time, the crew realizes that they are running low on supplies, and Johnny actually recommends they go to the Baratie, a seafaring restaurant. Now Nami looks surprised as she says that Luffy had the exact same thought, that they should go to the Baratie not only to get food stock, but also to maybe get a chef to take over the kitchen, because currently she was the cook and they would like some better meals. They sail for a few days and then they end up arriving at the Baratie, where they dock their ship attached to the boat. Now Luffy is excited. Really excited. So much so that the crew wonders why. He gets off the ship and he hurriedly enters the restaurant, making quite a ruckus when entering. He gets approached by one of the waiters as they tell him that the restaurant is packed full and that they'd have to at least wait a day until there's even one open spot. At that moment, a click can be heard. Luffy looked over to his left and there was a man pointing a gun at him. A Marine. The Marine recognized Luffy. After all, Luffy was the boy with the highest first issued bounty on the entire East Blue, that being a bounty of 30 million berry. Now of course, that wasn't why he recognized Luffy, it was because of Luffy's updated bounty which showed his new face, the 35 million berry bounty one. He started screaming about filthy pirate disturbing a beautiful date he was having, stuff like that, being kind of annoying. Hearing some of the commotion, a few chefs would exit the kitchen, along with Zeph, the head chef. Along with them was a blonde man. Now Luffy stared at this man as he knew who this was. The man asked why the Marine was pointing a gun. The Marine spoke. This man has a 35 million berry bounty and is a threat to your restaurant. After hearing that, the man got knocked out. A kick to the head, which shot him out of the restaurant. The person who dealt out the kick was none other than Sanji, the yellowed-haired chef. As he spoke, anybody who's hungry or starving can come eat whenever they want. After hearing that, Sanji got hit on the head by Zeph, who was speaking something about not being able to pay or get supplies if they just gave out food for free. Then, after looking at Luffy and hearing that he was a pirate, he pointed out that he'd probably have a lot of money. But in that instant, Luffy told Sanji to join his crew, confusing the chef. Why would a pirate ask him to join his crew? Why specifically him? He hadn't really done anything off of note. But Luffy was adamant. He kept asking over and over again, acting kind of like a spoiled brat. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he composed himself and introduced himself as Monkey D. Luffy, the man who was going to be king of the pirates. Zeph laughed at this, saying that a scrub like him would never make it in the Grand Line. However, Luffy looked at Zeph and released the smallest bit of Conqueror's Haki. It didn't knock anybody out, but this was a testament to Luffy's strength. Zeph realized this. He knew that this boy wasn't just your ordinary go-to person with a dream of treasure. This was a strong kid. Zeph retracted his statement and then asked why Luffy would want somebody like Sanji on his crew. And the answer was simple. Because it was Sanji. Now, this confused Zev and Sanji. They'd never heard of Luffy, and in their entire time of being together, they had never seen him. Plus, Zeph had received the bounty notice of Luffy when he was still a child. There was no way that this boy who had received a bounty around the same time that Zeph and Sanji were working together would be an acquaintance of Sanji. Sanji just dropped it and entered the kitchen again. Luffy tried following him, but he got ushered out by the chefs, so he simply returned to the ship, getting some money to pay for some food, as they took over the table that the Marine was sitting at. The entire crew, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp, sat around a table. They started eating, and when Sanji came over, he acted really perverse towards Nami, seeing she was a beautiful girl, and he started flirting with her. In turn, he also asked her why she joined his crew, his being Luffy's. She lashed out a bit, saying that Sanji didn't have any business with the deal that Nami and Luffy had made. Sanji thought about it and thought that Luffy might have forced her into joining his crew, which was not true. He gave a cold look to Luffy and then returned to the kitchen. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the sea, a broken ship was slowly sailing towards the Baratie. A few days pass. In these few days, Luffy and Sanji talk a bit with each other. Sanji's misunderstanding of Luffy forcing Nami to join got cleared up, and well, Luffy and Sanji talk a bit about the past. Luffy talks about goals and ambitions, about him wanting to become the Pirate King, and Sanji asks him questions of whether or not he can do it. After all, he did something that made Zeph recognize him. And then Luffy says that he will definitely succeed, but that Sanji should not give up on his dream. This makes Sanji question how much Luffy knows, but then at that moment, a loud bang could be heard. A pirate named Jin had entered, and he fell down on the floor. He was starving, and he looked in really bad shape. He had pulled out his gun, and he demanded food, but he got kicked out and beaten. Sanji saw this and decided to pull him up. He entered the kitchen, and there he got some of the food scraps, which he then beautifully made into a dish, which he then served to Jin. Luffy remembered this from his first encounter with Sanji. He remembered the kindness Sanji had shown, even though he looked indifferent. Luffy spoke once more, but what he said made Sanji shake. Luffy started talking about the All Blue, and about his goals and ambitions, saying that he'd want to see it too. Upon hearing this, Sanji's passion lit up again. Not a lot, it was a small candle flame, but he talked about it with Luffy, saying how he would have loved to see it if he ever found it, but not saying that he'd want to find it himself, being a bit cold, in a sense. Talking with Luffy lights the fire more and more, and Sanji is seriously considering setting out with Luffy, but something's holding him back, and it's the same thing that it was in the past. The Baratie. It's his home after all. Luffy misinterprets this. Most of the memories that he had from his past life are either vague or foggy or very clear, most of the clear ones being the most recent ones of his later years in life. He thought that Sanji was scared because of his father. He jumps down and he pats Sanji, saying that he'll take care of his past as well. Sanji questions what he means, but there's no way anybody would know about his past, would there? So he just decides to not think about it and just brushes it off. Another day passes, and whilst the crew is having a meal, another loud bang could be heard. This time a pirate who is fully coated in gold armor enters the restaurant. He yells out for food to be brought or he'll kill everybody in this place. Zeph recognizes this man as Don Krieg, so instead of fighting back like some of the other pirates would do, he brings out an entire sack of food after Don Krieg had already received some. The other chefs are enraged. They ask Zeph why he would do something like that, and Zeph said that if they want to defend the Baratie, they'll have to do it in a fair and honorable way. They fight fiercely, but the Baratie is starting to lose. Even Zeph is starting to fade out, but simply because of his older age. He can't keep up. Sanji joins in the battle pretty late. He overslept after flirting with too many women that night. He enters the battle, but he's also starting to get overpowered and struggling. He ends up getting knocked down, and right before Krieg can finish Sanji off, a very powerful Conqueror's Haki wave hits, and it hits every single Krieg pirate. They pass out, but the Conqueror's Haki reaches even further, notifying a man who's currently on a raft on his way to the Baratie of an existence which can challenge him. The only pirate who remains standing is Don Krieg, who reveals the true strength of his armor. However, it has no effect on Luffy, who's made out of gum. The bullets just simply bounce back. Zeph tells Luffy that this isn't a fight he can win. However, Luffy simply stretches his arm backwards. A gum pistol would fly towards Krieg, who instantly pulled out a cape with spikes. However, the spikes break and Krieg gets knocked out in one singular blow. Looking a bit closer, Zeph saw that Luffy used Haki, armament Haki, and quite the advanced one as well. As he looked closer, he saw that Krieg's armor was fine, but before he passed out, he coughed up blood. Surprisingly, the armor started crumbling away, as if it had been broken from the inside. Now, Zeph didn't know this technique, but he knew that this was advanced armament Haki. He had fought with strong opponents in the Grand Line before. In that instant, a slash attack had destroyed all the ships besides the Mary and the Baratie. This slash was done by none other than Hawkeye Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman. Now, Zoro saw this as his opportunity and instantly challenged Mihawk. However, Mihawk walks right past him, as he is astonished by Luffy's strength, and challenges him to a duel. However, Zoro interrupts once more. "Fight me," he says with a ferocious look in his eyes. Mihawk turns around to see Zoro, and he decides to humor him, so he draws this small blade that he had on his necklace. Their fight starts, and at first, Mihawk blocks everything Zoro throws at him. However, something sparks within Zoro. The last few days he had been training with Luffy. Luffy had explained the concept of Haki to everybody on the crew, even Nami, and he had explained each one: Conqueror's Haki, Armament Haki, and Observation Haki. So Zoro had a sort of sense on it. Something sparked, and for a second he activated Haki as he slashed at the little pendant, and it actually drew back Mihawk for a second. The world's strongest swordsman regained his posture instantly, but he was still surprised and a little bit shocked. This was some strong Haki, even though he knew. This kid had never used Haki before. This was the first time. He asks Zoro his name, to which Zoro replies, "My name is Roanoa Zoro." Mihawk then proceeds to draw his black blade, Yoru, as he tells him that he will finish him off with the world's strongest blade. Zoro once again tries to re-emerge that feeling as he prepares his attack. He starts spinning his blades and rushes forward at the same time Mihawk does. 3 sword style secret art. 3,000 worlds. Zoro cries out as he rushes at Mihawk. The moment their blades clash, that feeling Zoro has emerges one more time into his blades, and the clash is over. One of Zoro's swords breaks completely whilst the other snaps off half of it. His Wado Ichimonji, however, is completely fine, and Mihawk turns around surprised as he tells Zoro that he is very, very happy, and that he should train harder to challenge him once more in the future. He doesn't end it there though, as he still slashes Zoro's chest, which Luffy is still unhappy about, but he doesn't really do anything about it, as he knows that after this in the past, Zoro grew tremendously. Zoro ends up getting saved by Johnny and Yosaku, and as he reemerges, he puts up his Wado Ichimonji and he vows to Luffy that he'll never lose again. No matter who he is fighting, he won't lose. Luffy laughs as he says that he'll keep him on that promise. However, at that moment, Mihawk turns back to Luffy, as he points his blade towards Luffy, and their fight starts. Luffy instantly transforms into his Gear Second, and rushes towards Mihawk. Mihawk slashes at Luffy, but both using their observation Haki dodge. Luffy, however, gets a punch in on Mihawk. Surprisingly, it hurts. It hurts a lot. Not only is Luffy using advanced Haki, armament Haki, but he's also coating himself in Conqueror's Haki. He had learned this in his fight with Kaido, and he had at least 10 years to train this technique, and he felt like his proficiency in it was at least at the level of Kaido, or at least the level Kaido showed. Mihawk was surprised, but he wasn't seriously injured. He had blocked part of the attack. However, he knew that if this fight went on, everything around him would be destroyed, and, well, he just didn't feel like having to swim back to the Grand Line. So he sheathed his blade. He said that he was very satisfied and that he'd be looking forward to the day that they meet in the Grand Line. And Luffy says the same thing. Mihawk turns around to leave. The next few days, the Baratie fixes itself back up, together with Luffy and the others helping out, even Nami being there. Sanji and Luffy talk a lot in this time, and Sanji asks a very serious question. He asks if Luffy knew about his past and his father and his siblings, and Luffy just says yes. Sanji asks if he's not scared about them chasing him, but Luffy simply says that he'll deal with it when the time comes. Sanji doesn't know why, but a tear wells up and, well, that's that. He decides to join. He talks about it with Zeph, and the other chefs all agree that he should. After all, if it wasn't for Luffy and the others, the Baratie would probably be gone. So, they say their goodbyes. They give a lot of supplies as a sort of reimbursement for helping out in the entire Krieg and Mihawk situation, and with that, they set out, waving goodbye as they're now set on their next destination. On to Kokoyashi Village. And with that, this part of What If Luffy Went Back in Time is finished, guys. I know it's not the longest part, but hey, it's not bad. Anyway, with that out of the way, like and subscribe. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Join the Roblox group. They're the first 2 links in the description. And with that out of the way, my name's the Dragon Lord, and I'm signing out.